Nick Hanauer, welcome. We've just recorded a radio and television HARDtalk interview, and now welcome to everybody who's watching online as well, because Nick's agreed to stay on and take questions from our wonderful live audience here at the BBC Theatre in London. We've got a terrific audience with us. I know there are lots of questions for Nick. For those of you watching who don't know him, he is one of America's most successful entrepreneurs. He's worth many hundreds of millions of dollars himself. His companies are worth much, much more. But he has a fascinating critique of the way capitalism works in the United States and across the world. So to tease out more of his views, and indeed your views in the audience here, of capitalism in the 21st century, let's open it up to questions. Who would like to... Oh, goodness, we've got loads of hands up. Let's start on this side, and I promise we'll try and get as many as we can. We'll get you, sir, with your beret on. Just give us your name and your question.
If the opportunity arose, would you consider being the President of the United States of America?
No. My wife says no.
What do you say?
My wife says no.
But we'll go to the back. But if I may, while we get the microphone to the gentleman with the beard at the back, we'll get to many, but why not? I mean, it's a serious point. You know, you have very strong opinions and you believe America needs to change. Why not run for political office?
Well, mostly because as I look around, it's not clear to me that there are elected political leaders that are creating or animating as much change as I and my gang of troublemakers are in this other way. You know, politics is a highly constraining enterprise when you're just some, you know, rich dude from the hinterlands of Seattle without constraint. You have many more degrees of freedom, and you can do, you can just do more aggressive, interesting, creative things. And so, I mean, you know, the trouble is that no one is going to hand me the keys to the White House. You know, to be president requires an unbelievable commitment, and at this point, it just doesn't seem like that makes any sense. And I don't want to be a congressperson, so, yeah. So.
All right, well, I'd love to talk to you more about that, but it's not my show anymore. So, sir, go on.
Stuart Joseph, there's a general distrust in how governments spend money and how effective they are. So if we raise taxation, who's going to spend it?
Yeah, that's a fair question. And I think that, you know, governments need to do a lot to win back the trust of folks. But I'll tell you what, anyone who's looked closely at how large companies spend money would be equally appalled by the lack of transparency, the lack of efficiency, the lack of effectiveness. Incompetence is endemic. You find as much incompetence in large private enterprises as you do in large public enterprises. But I do want to speak to this because it was a subject that we did not raise, which is the idea that the problem will be solved with taxation. This is not true. The trillion, at least in the American economy, the $1 trillion elephant in the room is not raising taxes on rich people a little bit more. It is the transfer of wealth which has taken place over the last 30 years from workers to owners. In 1980, actually from 1950 to 1980, American corporations had about a 6% profit as a percent of GDP. Today, it's 12 or 13%. In the intervening period, labor as a percentage of GDP went down an identical amount. That's $1 trillion. And so you would think, well, if you listen to the trickle-down folks, they would say, well, that's great news because we use that money to invest in so on and so forth. That's a lie. In the United States this year, American corporations will devote 54% of profits to stock buybacks, which is simply companies generating stock price increases by retiring their own shares. It's this unbelievable Ponzi scheme, which consumes now $700 billion in our country per year, 4% of GDP. 4% of GDP is now being devoted to stock buybacks to enrich a tiny minority of people. And that's the big problem. right? So whether I pay 35 or 45% tax rate, it's totally beside the point. The much bigger opportunity is to raise wages, for instance, via the minimum wage and other mechanisms, and lower the share of the value created by enterprise that goes to owners and executives, and increase the amount that goes to workers.
Okay. Right, let's, we hope we can get as many of you in as possible. Keep the questions short if you can. Let's go down this side. We'll perhaps have a couple at the front. We'll do two at once. The lady and then the gentleman in front of the lady. So yeah, you, ma'am.
Hello. Previously, you've referenced Ford as an example of capitalism. I'd like to ask if you could possibly clarify the difference between the way that he perceived capitalism and the way that we're currently using capitalism in the US now, and how that could be used as an improvement.
Yeah, so Henry Ford famously raised the wages of workers because he intuited that in a world where people earned more people would be able to buy cars, and of course he was right. And it worked out very, very well for Henry Ford. That said, he was operating in a more constrained environment with less global competition, and the levers were clearer and easier for him to pull. And yet, we have forgotten those lessons in the United States. I mean, you have people in leadership positions in the United States, like Speaker of the House John Boehner, who will get in front of television sets and say things like, of the minimum wage, if you raise the price of employment, guess what happens? You get less of it. I mean, this core trickle-down idea that when wages go up, employment must go down. And what's stunning is that people believe that. So CEOs in our country now earn 300 or 400 times the median wage. They used to earn 30 times. The rate of increase in CEO pay is going up 127 times faster than the median wage. So it makes you ask the question, how do we have so many CEOs? If when you raise the price of employment, you get less of them. I know of no CEO's job that has been outsourced to China or eliminated by automation. So too for financial services workers, software workers, and so on and so forth. Clearly no connection between these things. And so we have to remind ourselves of these connections between wages and employment.
So I promised you one at the front, yeah.
To me, one of the most interesting capitalists in America is Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
Do you think his brand of capitalism might be a way out of the problems you mentioned? It's interesting that he too, I think, believes that he gets paid too much. And,
I don't know Mr. Buffett, although we've connected via email a couple of times. I think Warren Buffett is a man who absolutely sees all these connections, but he's not as political and as vocal an advocate as I wish he was. But I think he's definitely, he has a lot of ideas that are definitely along the right track, on the right track. So.
But I mean, I guess the point about him and you is you don't make stuff. I mean, you've made shed loads of money out of investing in other people's ideas and products and whatever. And Warren Buffett, yeah, your own.
Yeah, I've founded a bunch of companies.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll shut up then.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. My point isn't going anywhere, so I'm going to go back to everybody else. We'll take you, sir. And then the gentleman in the striped shirt behind you. Sorry, I know it's difficult, but there's so many hands up. Yeah, go on, sir.
So my question is this. You make a really good point about low wages. And in the UK here, we've got something called the minimum wage. And we also have 0 hours contracts where people get paid very little for doing their work. My question to you is this: in the world of globalization that we live in now, how do you reconcile paying people the kind of wages you're talking about when the same work can be done in another part of the world and there's freedom of trade and movements of people and so on without causing disruptions? Don't you think there's a bit of a conflict there?
Yeah, so that's a great question, the question of globalization. So first, you have to remember that the same people who are writing the trade treaties are the people who wrote your tax code, right? This is the trickle-down This is the trickle-down crowd, and they have a very particular view about how the economy should work, and they're super comfortable with arrangements where a few people benefit from these things and a lot of people don't. So the things that citizens have accepted as sort of given about the way in which we trade with other countries indeed are not given, and you can have other constructs that may create a different result.
You mean protectionism?
Well, or if not protectionism, at least allowances for the dynamics of trade. Well, I'm a big believer in trade, but to be very, very clear, we have found ways to create a situation where some people benefit from trade and other people don't, right? But those arrangements are not set in stone. We could distribute the benefits and the costs of trade in a very, very different way. But unless I'm missing something about the great country of Great Britain, mostly what you're making here today is tea, if I may say so.
I think you're slightly simplifying the British economy.
Unless I'm wrong, 77% of your economy is a service economy today, and those jobs cannot be outsourced. All the jobs that could be outsourced, they're gone, right? The person that's working in a barista or in a restaurant or wherever it is, that is the economy. That is the economy. And if those folks don't earn enough money to raise a family and build a life, then you don't have an economy. We have to find a way as a modern, yeah.
All right. I'm being rigorous because I want to get as many questions in, and we've only got 5 minutes left. I promised the gentleman with the stripy shirt. Yeah.
Yes, Andre Berner, my name. You were talking about the trickle-down economy and that you don't believe, John Berner, that he gets away with these kind of arguments still as a Speaker of the House. But if you have in the United States the Fox News channel, who is kind of very busy bringing exactly this kind of argument to the people, and many people are actually listening to them, do you think your money might be very well worth spent in a more progressive kind of TV station to get another word out there? That would be one point I would like to make to you. And, oh crap, I forgot my other one.
Oh, never mind. That's a good
yeah.
One point's enough.
Yeah, we think of the Fox channel as rich people persuading middle-class people to blame poor people. That's sort of their business model. And you know, the problem is that, and I don't want to go into a rat hole, but there's a difference between people who are progressive and conservative, and one of the differences well demonstrated in psychological research is that conservative folks tend to be fearful, and they're animated by that, which is why right-wing radio and TV work so well and left-wing doesn't, because left-wingers like me are like, oh, there are two sides to this, and they're nice people too, and so on and so forth. So it's never worked, and despite the fact that people have tried. So
if you are launching a TV station with very well-paid hosts,
such as yourself,
I'm so available it's not true. Right, we're only
calling
got
you
room
first.
For 2 more questions, and I promise I'll go to this side at the back, sort of. There's a gentleman with a grey sweater waving his hand. Can we get a microphone to him? And then we'll go down a bit to the gentleman with the white shirt. Yeah, you, sir. But first you. And then I'm afraid we've only got room for 2 more. So you, sir.
Hello, I'm Craig Nichol. One thing that hasn't been mentioned much is the fact that we're now in a world of sort of inbuilt disposability and sort of consumerism. And we're kind of hitting environmental limits, including, of course, climate change. How do you propose capitalism can be tweaked to deal with these long-term sustainability issues?
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. And one of my, actually 2 of my colleagues are in the room, Eric Beinacher and Marie Pescott from the Institute for New Economic Thinking at Oxford, which is a great place for you all to learn about. And Eric and I are in the process of writing a new book about how to reimagine capitalism. And if you reject the idea that GDP it should be the measure of growth, which is just really how much stuff we burn and move around society, and recognize that growth has to be really the way in which we improve the material standards of living of people, then you can quite clearly see that it's really solutions to human problems that are the thing that represent growth. And when you see it in that way, it allows you to dematerialize the economy. What will never work is saying, let's all be like North Korea and just shut off the lights. right? Human societies need to advance, they need to improve, but if we can change the definition from how much stuff we burn to how much we improve people's lives, we can reorganize the economy in ways that will make it both better for everybody and sustainable.
Okay. Thank you. You, sir, yeah. And I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm afraid to say this has to be the last question simply because we're out of time in the theatre. But go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you. My name's Albert Timpson. I picked up on earlier, you said that the rich and the poor, the gap grew closer during wartime. And no one wants to go to war. But most people in those periods were seeking peace. It's why they went to war, to seek peace. There are common goals at the moment we all have in our societies where global warming affects us whether we're rich or poor, young or old. Obesity is becoming a mega problem with our society becoming unhealthy for whatever reason. There was the common goal for peace during wartime was something, I want to say it wasn't tangible, it's not finance. People weren't trying to get richer, they were trying to make their society a better place, which we all are. We want for the poorer to have more opportunities to play their part in society and feel as if they are putting something into society as well as perhaps taking something from it, as we all do. Is there a common goal or common goals that you feel that either the American society or the Western world in its democracies should be looking at that is not financed, not finance? It's something we can all want to have, but it's not, shall we say, tangible, like peace.
Yeah,
Or
so
health.
there's nothing like a good old existential threat to bring people together. For me, I would prefer to somehow find a way to bring people together without the threat of war or death. But I think that all people share the goal of what President Clinton called the quiet miracle of a normal life, having a good job and being able to raise a family and have the view that your children will do better than you can. We sort of call that the American dream, but I don't think there's a place on earth where people don't share that aspiration. And I think that by essentially recalibrating how we think about how the economy works, what the point is, and what our individual roles should be in it, the future can be very bright. The world can produce, we can create policies that create growth for everybody, growth in a sustainable way, and honestly, I think the quiet miracle of a normal life.
Well, I'm giving myself the privilege of the last question because you've just sparked in me a thought. I like the question and this idea that there is some common human purpose that we all could share. The only flip side of that is that when you've reflected on this super elite group of the rich who control so much power and influence in America today, you've reflected upon them, and you're one of them, although obviously quite a particular one of them. But you've said, you know what, so many of my fellow zillionaires are borderline sociopaths. They have no empathy and they appear to care about no other people.
Yeah.
Do you really believe that? Because then if it's true, then all this stuff about common humanity and us finding a common purpose, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, so, in any large group of people, you will find some of those people who don't care about other people. If you've never met a person who doesn't care about other people, you may be a person who doesn't care about other people, right? And in a highly cooperative world, missing the part in the brain which allows you to connect emotionally with and have sympathy for other people can be an enormous advantage. And indeed, many enormously ambitious people are successful partly because they are missing that bit. Perhaps you've met some of them. That's a process of self-selection, and there are indeed a lot of very successful people who don't put other people first. The good news is that most people do put other people first, and collectively we need to push back on the idea that by advancing my narrow self-interest, I benefit you. This, of course, again, is one of the core parts of the trickle-down idea that the better I do, somehow magically it will be for you. It's not true, right? And so we collectively have to push back on that.
All right. Well, Nick Hanauer, for a fantastic interview. Thank you.